Here is the champion of Spain,
Angel
Casero, 121, trying to stay in contact with the Lance Armstrong group, the group of the yellow jersey, but all of the time being led by Kevin Livingston. 186 his number, and this man now just thinking all about getting himself to the top of the climb, not about chasing down the leading group of which is now 4 riders, because Andrea Piron once again has recovered and managed to get himself up to the leading group, but really just making sure that they don't get too much of an advantage over the summit. And in fact, they're not doing such a great job, that leading group of 4, because the last time check we had was, in fact, they were just down to 30 seconds.
30 seconds is the gap, and there's nobody between the 4 leaders now and the Maillot Jaune group of Lance Armstrong. So we've got Pavel Tonkov, David Echeverria, Andrea Perron, Alberto Eli are the 4 riders in the lead. The 11th, 12th and 13th place riders in the overall classification are on the attack. Heading up now above the clouds here on the Tourmalet. Magically the sky is cleared as the riders started the climb. That's great for us and great for them as they head up now towards the top of the Col du Tourmalet.
Looking at the work being done here by Kevin Livingston, I wonder how invincible Lance Armstrong would have been if Jonathan Vaughters had still been here at the Tour de France, if he hadn't gone out in that crash on the 3rd stage over the Passage aux Bois and been forced to retire, because then Armstrong would have had some very strong allies in the mountains. Despite people saying that the US Postal Service team is not one of the strongest teams in the Tour de France, they've used the best of their abilities to control this race since Lance Armstrong took the yellow jersey on the stage to Metz.
Well, Tonkov has done all of the work on the Col du Tourmalet today. He launched the attack, they joined him, he set all of the pace, not worried about anybody coming. He's been on his own with just Echeverria, then in a group of 7, now it's a group of 4, and he continues to set the pace. The others are coming and going as they will, but as Paul has said, they are not riding away from Lance Armstrong. That great pace-making by Kevin Livingstone is keeping them right in touch here. 30 seconds is the gap, and that's all.
Andrea Perron having a hard time to stay with this leading group of riders here. He keeps yo-yoing on and off the back of the leading group of 3, and it's all because of the pressure being set on the front of the group by Pavel Tonkov. Tonkov not too happy with that young kid there, because we all know that at the summit of these climbs it's very easy to make a mistake. We saw that with Giuseppe Guerini, who went down with just 1 kilometre to go to the finish of the Alpe d'Huez, and a lot of riders very wary about the spectators coming onto the course.
Absolutely. Now we continue here. This is Stefano Gazzelli, who was in the original breakaway. Now looks as though he's in a little bit of trouble here. We're up towards the ski lifts now. Once you see the cable cars coming over the road, good indication we're not too far away from the summit of the Col du Tourmalet. And Kevin Livingstone has done a great ride today. He doesn't look under pressure at all. Alex Uller clearly deciding he's not going to attack on this climb. Maybe he can't. Richard Virenque again following the wheels and will be looking to sprint out of this group for the maximum points he can gain in the King of the Mountains and continue building his lead in that.
Armstrong sitting a long way back down this group at the moment. I'm surprised to see him lying so far off the wheel of Kevin Livingston. He's down with Fernando Escartin, and the man up in 2nd position behind Kevin Livingston at the moment is Vladimiro Belli, the rider from Festina, who was really ridden well over the last couple of days.
Well, the fact you saw Zuller look over his shoulder as he check out where Armstrong was, and I thought for a moment he was going to launch an attack, but he hasn't done so. He's just settled back into the group. It's becoming a very select group, this, and despite nobody attacking and just Kevin Livingstone setting the pace, but the riders are quite clearly, many of them are tired from yesterday.
Then the red jersey there just off the back of Lance Armstrong is Laurent Dufaux. He looks like he's having a hard time this afternoon as well. Kelme again very much in presence. Just going through the picture there was Carlos Contreras, the Colombian rider on the Kelme squad, but it looks as if Laurent Dufaux, wearing number 74 there, has recuperated a little bit to move himself back comfortably into this group. But a great job being done by Kevin Livingston there in the blue and black jersey of US Postal Service. Absolute concentration on his face. He's not thinking about anything at all. And in fact, one rider we're not able to see in the group at the moment is the man who's ridden so well in the Tour de France so far, Daniele Nardello, who started this morning in 6th place overall.
Well, these are the leaders inside a kilometre to go. They head up towards the summit of the Col du Tourmalet. It's right straight ahead of them now by that house there. And they've moved up beautifully. This is actually turning out to be ironic. This is some of the nicest weather conditions we've seen on the top of the Col du Tourmalet. And still Tonkov is setting the pace. Little Echeverria in the middle, and Ellie is just behind. But we really could do with knowing the whereabouts of Daniele Nardello. He hasn't missed a move the whole tour. He's not in that group containing Armstrong at the moment.
Another man not in that group. In the black and yellow squad of Once, he's not there either. Abraham Olano. Lance Armstrong's group only 25 seconds behind, so Kevin Livingstone doing a very sensible job, just pacing them up nice and slowly. No panic at all in the US Postal team at the moment. They're riding just off the back of the leading group of 3 riders, and the kind of descender that Armstrong is, he could very rapidly close in on the leading group on the descent.
Well, if they did get together going down, it would make a very class group of bike riders at the front, and with 1 or 2 of the top 10 missing there, they would start to ride pretty hard as well. Livingstone trying to put his team leader into that front group at the moment and doing a very good job. 24 seconds the time gap now, and Kevin will go on the front as long as he possibly can here, and then leave his team captain to do what he can. Back to the front now, running up towards the top of the Col de Tourmalet, and Tonkov has led virtually all the way up this mountain. And in fact, Echevarria wanted himself a can of Coke there, and he got it.
A very alert man at the side of the road there. He saw somebody handing up a drink, and it's fairly safe to take up a drink which comes in a can or a closed bottle, but you have to be very wary in the mountains of taking on board drinks from spectators at the side of the road, because very often they think they're doing you a good favor, and they'll get water from a stream at the side of the road, and you have a cold drink like that, and you can end up very rapidly getting a very disturbed stomach.
Further down, Livingstone still setting the pace. Armstrong has moved up nicely onto his back wheel now as we look down to the back end of this group here. The one containing Escartine. Roland Meyer, who was with the leaders, got dispatched back to the group and is continuing to lose ground.
Also in this group, Alexander Vinokurov, the rider many thought would be a big star in this first Tour de France of his. He will come back in future years and be a man capable of rivaling the best on the slopes of some of these mountain passes, but for the moment he's having a very difficult time in his first tour. Alberto Elli now in the pink and white of Telecom, deciding to set the pace, and he's put Tonkov into difficulty.
Well, can you believe this now? Elli is having a very, very good tour here. He's limiting. Look at that though, Paul. They've climbed right back into the sights of the 3 leaders here as we come up to the top of the Col de Tourmalet in the Tour de France. Almost the heads of this race are back together again now. Alberto Elli, using superb strength, is riding away from Echevarria and Tonkov, while Kevin Livingstone is bringing up the yellow jersey towards the leaders. There's a lovely shot of Alberto Elli now as he comes up towards the top of the Col, with Echevarria on the left, and they just literally rise out of the ground. They've been climbing for over 17.5 kilometers now. And then Kevin Livingstone, tremendous job this man has done, bringing his team leader up the mountain. And I think on the descent we are going to find a very select group of riders forming at the front.
And Perron just holding on over the top there for 4th place. Armstrong accelerating as well to the front of the group for the descent. Very sensible move by him, putting his rain jacket on for the descent, because on these descents you can get very cold indeed. You have to look after yourself, because let's not forget there's still many days to go in this Tour de France, and Armstrong doesn't want to get a chill.
These initial kilometers off the top of the Col twist and turn a little bit, and then they open up the speed, but as you can see, we are going to go into the cloud halfway down, and then it's going to be pretty rough for these riders for a few kilometers before they come out. Long way basically downhill now for all of these riders as they go back down to the valley below, and then they start to climb the last 2 climbs, the last 2 serious climbs of this year's Tour de France.
Well, that was a good move there, a good acceleration going over the top. This is what the rest of the group look like. We're looking for a black and yellow jersey of Abraham Olano. For the moment, it's difficult to spot. There is Udo Bolz, the German champion. A great lieutenant himself for Jan Ullrich, who's not riding the Tour de France this year. And moving up as well is Stefan Erlo, the man who is hoping to climb himself back up into the overall standings and become the best placed Frenchman. He had a very hard time yesterday, losing more than 13 minutes on the stage.
Well, not too bad. 121 down on the leaders, Paul. They could all come together again before we got the Col de Soulor here. Here we go now, and we've descended now. I didn't quite catch it. 1 kilometer down, I think we've done so far. As we go back up to the leader here, I think Tonkov is the leader. Our motorbike will point that out in a minute, or we're still carrying on. It could be 3rd man on the road here.
In the front of the race at the moment, it's Alberto Elli who accelerated over the top of the climb. In front of Tonkov is also David Echevarria, who's taking a big risk on the descent. But Tonkov not descending very well at all. He's really scared going into these corners. He doesn't look relaxed at all as he goes around there. He would normally get around that corner a lot faster than Tonkov is going, and I think Tonkov is actually going to wait for the group behind and leave the 2 men in front to stay out a bit longer.
It certainly looks that way. We're 2 kilometres down now as Tonkov, a little bit of slippery surface there. Here's Abraham Olano with 3 of his teammates pacing him up towards the summit. Again, he has had a terrible, terrible day in the Pyrenees, and I think he's going to be losing 3 minutes now because the clock is already approaching 2:30, and already Abraham Olano is in trouble with 2 more climbs to come.
Olano, not a great climber. He's proved it again. He wants to walk into the footprints of Miguel Indurain, but he just cannot survive in the mountains the same way Big Miguel could. He always has a hard time on these big mountain passes. The average mountains, which go up to 1,500 meters, he's fine, but once you put another 500 meters on top, he really does go into difficulty.
Well, he's gone over the top, 2:55 down, and Olano now in all sorts of difficulty again. If he's going to want to get back into contact, he's going to have to take risks on this way down, because the leaders, and this is the Armstrong group, are now on the way down, shrouded in mist. And this, the Col de Tourmalet has gone all according to plan for Lance Armstrong. The fine pacemaking of Livingstone done no damage at all to his lead in the Tour de France. And I think he's going to be feeling very relieved now as he makes his way down here. He won't take too much risk, and he won't worry about whether he catches the leaders just yet. So we're on the way down. As we descend into the mist, we'll probably lose pictures for a little while, so we'll take a break.
Welcome back. The Tour de France is the biggest annual sporting event in the world, but unlike the Olympic Games or the Football World Cup, it goes to a different venue every day. To move 250 television vehicles around the country, it has to be operated like a slick military operation. That's why when we come into some of the small town finishes, everybody has to know just exactly where they're going to place their vehicles. It's all planned out beforehand so they can make the best of the small space available. The amazing thing is, though, it's not just the television that rush into the finish line, it's also the press, the team managers, and anybody else involved with the Tour de France organisation. For the moment, everything's working out fine.
Well, thanks, Paul. It really is like a giant jigsaw. I'm absolutely amazed how they put this all together every day of the Tour de France. Anyway, back to the action now. The men that make the Tour de France, and the man that's making the stage today, Pavel Tonkov, is still at it here on the Col de Soulor. He's about 5 kilometres from the summit and still setting the pace. So once we came down the Col de Tourmalet, there was a massive regrouping behind, but these guys stayed away. So we've still got Tonkov, Echevarria and Elie out in front. And they're out in front of Christophe Wienro, who was last year's King of the Mountains. We haven't seen anything of him, but he's there. And then we go back to a chase group of 8 riders, and here they are. Roland Meyer is the rider in second position. The others are Marcos Serrano, Alexander Vinokourov, Carlos Contreras, Jose Luis Arrieta, Francois Simon, the champion of France, Francisco Garcia, and Hernan Buenahora. They are the boys chasing, and the yellow jersey group, which is now quite a big bunch, 4 minutes 27. In fact, Olano is back safely alongside Armstrong.
Olano took a lot of risks on the descent of the Col de Tourmalet with his teammates there to get up to Lance Armstrong's group. The reason he got back really was because nobody in the group wanted to put the hammer down, because there was still more than 90 kilometres to go to the finish, and that's why there was a general regrouping of a lot of riders coming up from behind. But that did again turn the tables towards Lance Armstrong's advantage, because several of his teammates managed to get back into the group as well, and he's now well supported by his US Postal Service team.
Well, as we look at the breakaway going here, Paul, I know a lot of the British press and certainly a lot of the French press carrying stories again that they really do seem they are trying to pin Armstrong down in this tour as a drug taker. And they're saying now his urine has shown traces of a corticoid, a minuscule amount. And Armstrong now riding under the pressure of not just the Tour de France, but it seems a certain quarter of the press are out to prove him a cheat.
It seems almost a case of persecution as far as I can see, because it is only a certain portion of the press. I actually cruised around the press room last night, and it's definitely kind of a 60-40 feeling that Armstrong is riding the Tour de France clean. The other 40%, majority of them coming from the French press, in fact, who are starting to circulate rumours and finding certain amounts of details about the results of controls, which are in theory supposed to be absolutely secret, unless, of course, a rider turns a positive result in, and nobody has turned a positive result in. And the traces of cortisone, which are alleged to have been found in Lance Armstrong's urine, is very, very small indeed. He actually called me on the phone this morning, Phil, and told me that his result was 1,000 times less than anybody else.
But it did say, and I don't know how the story has started, because if the guy hasn't given a positive test, then nothing should be said. But they are saying that his urine showed a quantity of 0.2. And the French are saying, yes, but he said he's taken nothing. Now the test is saying he's taken something, so we're saying he's a liar.
Well, I think the problem is there's a slight interpretational problem between the English and French language. Armstrong himself is trying to talk French at any of the press conferences he gives, and when somebody says to you, are you taking a drug, you initially think, well, am I taking it orally or am I having an injection? And he would reply to that, no, he's not, because that is exactly the way he feels. But in fact, he did also tell me that he had been given a cream because he had a problem with a saddle boil, and that cream did contain a certain amount of cortisone. Now, the small level that has been revealed in his urine would indicate to me that that's probably where that trace came from.
And not been taken, but in fact been rubbed on and absorbed by the system.
He did, in fact, as well. One other point that he made to me, Phil, was, in fact, when he went to the medical control on that day, he actually gave a letter from his doctor saying, we have used a cream containing cortisone. So I really am not sure why there is this sense of persecution around Lance Armstrong, and it really does seem to be coming more from the French press than anywhere else.
All right, and let me remind you that before you are testing positive for a corticoid steroid, then the reading has to be a full 6 points, and we're talking here of 0.2. So it does sound at the moment like a case of sour grapes, but the story will run for a while yet, I'm sure of that. Well, we're looking now at the second, well, it's the third group really on the road, because one man is on his own, Christophe Rieneraud. This is Francois Simon, looking as though he's beginning to suffer a little bit now as we run up towards the top of the Col de Soulor. This is a long climb, by the way, the Col de Soulor. Some 19 kilometers it is to the summit, and the riders well, the ones that have taken the bull by the horns today, Elie, Tonkoff and Echevarria, nobody has really worked hard to chase them down. Armstrong continues to watch the senior riders in the Tour de France. If they don't move, I don't think Lance Armstrong will today.
He's not too worried about the men up the road, Alberto Elie, Pavel Tonkoff and David Echevarria. In fact, Tonkoff the closest place to him, 19 minutes behind. Armstrong's really more worried about attacks if they were to come from Alex Zülle and also from Fernando Escartin. That's why, once again, he's played a very good tactical move in letting some of the lesser riders, men who are further down the overall standings, get clear on the stage.
Looking here at the telecom rider going through our screen there, Alberto Elie. I had a little chat with the national coach of Germany earlier today, Heiko Salzwiedel, telling me he's just been speaking with Jan Ullrich, who is very positive and wants to get his hands on the Tour of Spain later this year. And there are a lot of riders, in fact, who aren't here for telecom. So there's a lot of good riders recovering from injury who'll be very fresh for the Tour of Spain, Paul. People like Bjorn Ries and Jens Hettner, etc.
And Bobby Julich. Bobby Julich went out of the Tour de France in that crash on stage 9 in the time trial around Metz, and talking to his team manager, Alain Bondu, who's a very good friend of mine, he said that Bobby Julich, in fact, has already taken a few pedal strokes of training to get himself back onto the bike, and now has flown across to the United States with his wife to start training again in earnest. And his major objective for the end of the season now is going to be the Tour of Spain, followed up very smartly after that by the World Championships. Escartin's launched an attack here. Immediately that came, then followed straight away by Lance Armstrong. He's not going to let any of the big contenders get clear of him.
Certainly not this one.
He's right onto the wheel of number 111 because he sees him as being the most dangerous man to him in the overall standings. And right there in attendance in the white jersey of Banesto, Alex Zülle.
Well, this is a serious attack now because we're going on the penultimate climb of the day. Escartin couldn't leave it any longer, and he's launched the attack. Armstrong straight onto him, and he's going to sit there in his slipstream if he can and see what becomes of that. Alex Zülle has realised it. One or two others trying to scurry across from the group as well.
Trying to get across there. The polka dot jersey of Richard Virenque was just a little off the back, caught out by that surprise attack there from Fernando Escartin. But you can see now the major panic at the front of this group where Lance Armstrong was. Coming across there, it was difficult to make clear who that other rider was coming across, but in fact Armstrong in second position behind Escartin, looking pretty comfortable.
Escartin couldn't leave this any longer. He had to go now as we climb the Col de Soulor, because the Col de Soulor really is a stepping stone, and a stone is the word here, to the Pyrenees, on to the Col d'Aubisque. As these four riders have settled down and lifted it up a notch now, Escartin stays out of the saddle there, and Armstrong easing himself out of the saddle as well there as he hangs on to Escartin. The other man who's come on is the Festina rider Vladimir Belli, who has joined Alex Zülle, the rider in white.
Vladimir Belli, you can see him now wearing number 141 at the back in the blue and yellow strip of Festina. A good response by him to get across to that attack, because in fact it's very difficult on a climb like this when a man like Fernando Escartin attacks to actually bridge the gap. But he was waiting for it, and he's got across Caught in no man's land at the moment is Richard Virenque, surprised by the severity of the attack of Fernando Escartin, but he's around about 15 seconds behind the group of Lance Armstrong. And another man trying to get himself into the race. This is number 88, Gert Verheyen, a surprise move by him.
Well, very surprised move. We thought it might have been Kurt van der Wouwer, but it looks like it is Verheyen who's gone clear. We'll see more about that in a moment. Belly lying 9th overall in the Tour, and he's hanging on to the top 3 riders in this year's race now. Taking it from the front there, 2nd place Escartin, 1st place Armstrong, 3rd place Zuller. And Richard Virenque 2nd in line here, and Casero and Comesso, the 2 champions behind him. They have yet to go forward, and again it is Stefan Guber of the Polti team setting the pace from the pack. But once again the heads of state have come out to fight here now, and indeed Escartin knows he's got to get rid of Lance Armstrong today, because after that it's advantage Armstrong to Paris.
He's had to try. This is the stage where he really had to go for it, and what he's done is put everybody in the Tour de France on alert. He wasn't able to get rid of the man he really needed to get rid of to confirm his 2nd place in the overall standings, and that's Alex Zuller. Zuller responded magnificently there and got across to the attack of Fernando Escartin. In the group that's caught in the middle at the moment, in fact, the French national champion Francois Simon has been dropped from that group, so he too will be very shortly picked up by the front of the main group. This is the attack of Escartin. All the US postal riders on the front, and he caught them immediately by surprise. But look at the response of Armstrong there.
He's watching.
As soon as he saw the green and white jersey of the Kelme rider come, he was straight out of the saddle. And Alex Zuller, he's always there.
Well, this is a great Tour, because when you get the leaders launch attacks like this, then you have a good Tour de France. And Escartin is determined to try and close down that gap on Armstrong by tonight. He's got to go here, he's got to get away here, he's got to go clear on the next climb, and then he's got to hang on for a long ride down to Pau. Armstrong knows that too.
Well, Armstrong will be very happy to stay in this group at the moment, but he won't want to work too much, because he'll find himself in a situation of being isolated once again from his teammates. He'll be happy to be with these 2 guys, because they're his closest challengers in 2nd and 3rd place in the overall standings, and he won't work with them until they get over the summit of the climb.
No, they've got to lose him now. It's his job just to stay and watch. They're saying the group Armstrong is 30 seconds. Well, that's ahead of the field they have just left behind. It's still quite a long way up to the riders in the lead. Last time gap we got about 3 minutes back, and then nearly 4 minutes here. That looks like Rinero, who was out front on his own, is coming back to the chase group of 8, which we think is only 7 now, because, oh, what's happened here? And I've no idea what Christophe Rinero was doing there, but he seemed to spot somebody he was not too happy with.
That was a very strange move to make on the slopes of a col, the Col de Soulor here. That person obviously giving some verbal abuse at the side of the road, and I can see that that's a very dangerous move he made there, and he wasn't too happy with that spectator at the side of the road, and he continued to gesticulate as he picks up pace to stay with the group.
Well, last year's King of the Mountains may have got an earful of something you didn't like to hear there, but anyway, we will not be a party to that, I don't think. But he's back in that group now. Vinokurov is the rider to our right, and number 125, the Vitiligo rider here, who is Garcia, Francisco Garcia. And it looks like they've got themselves a little bit of acceleration at the front there. 1 kilometre for the 3 leaders, the men who don't know the dramas unfolding behind them today. They've been setting the pace since the Col de Tourmalet, and Tonkov doing most of the lion's share of pacemaking as well. And so inside 1 kilometre now. The order over the top of the Tourmalet is Alberto Eli, Tonkov and Echeverria, followed by Andrea Perron. Escartin and Armstrong were over the top of the Tourmalet in 5th and 6th place. But then they allowed the leaders to run away again on what was a tricky descent in damp conditions. No point in taking risks, so they've stayed away for at least the top of this climb.
It's an amazing ride by Pavel Tonkov after the performance yesterday, when he got absolutely blown away. He was so aggressive on the early slopes, trying to go with all of the moves, trying to in fact stir up a lot of the action himself, but he wasn't able to continue through to the end, and he lost 11.25 minutes before the end of the stage, and dropping very quickly away in the overall rankings. In fact, down to 12th place at the start of this morning, a long way behind his own teammate Daniele Nardella, who for the moment has managed to come back to the group of what was Lance Armstrong's group at the bottom of this climb, but I wonder where he is now.
Well, he's probably somewhere in this group here, Paul, actually, because there he is, in fact, the white jersey, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in line in this group, being led at the moment by Richard Virenque, and 40 seconds now. They've been dropped by Lance Armstrong for 40 seconds. It's almost 4 minutes, though, up to the 3 leaders, who are not far off for crossing the summit. Here they are. And still Alberto Eli building himself a little bit of progress in the King of the Mountains over these 2 days. He's not going to endanger Richard Virenque, but even so, he's moving himself up that classification. Tonkov and little David Echeverria turning out to be quite an outstanding little rider here. Good all-rounder.
Echeverria has always promised to be an excellent stage race rider. He was the winner of the Tour de l'Avenir, which is regarded as a pointer to future performances in the Tour de France. He's won a stage so far here at this year's Tour de France, but today confirming that he is the kind of rider capable of winning sprints and also managing to get over the big mountain passes. We climb once again into the clouds here at the top of the Col de Soulor, and a very tricky, dangerous descent, not a long one off the top of this summit then, but once they do get down, they have to climb all the way back up again to the Col de l'Aubisque.
Now, are they going to allow Tonkov the honours this time, or what is a massive crowd here on top of the Col de Soulor? Because he's done most of the work to keep them clear, but it looks to me as though Alberto Eli is sharpening his legs there for the sprint over the top. Just look at that crowd right over into the cloud line here. They'll plunge away from the Soulor, but not very far before they start the climb of the Col d'Aubisque. We're at 1,474 metres here. A very short descent and straight onto the Col d'Aubisque, which takes them up 300 metres higher at 1,700 plus. Echeverria gives us a nice look in the camera. He won't see anybody coming up behind him. They're well clear at the moment. This could go down as the long escape that actually might work out at the finish.
Well, it's a pity they've got into the clouds, because there's a magnificent descent off the Col de Soulor before you actually get to the Aubisque, with some huge drops down into the valley below. They won't get a chance to see that. The Lotto rider has been confirmed as being Gert Verheyen. He's being picked up by the rest of the group there, but you can see as we go over the top, no sprint this time. It goes to Tonkov ahead of Eli, and in third place, very happy to be there, David Echeverria of the Once squad.
Yes, and indeed, he would only hope that it had been his teammate who was there. Abraham Olano, but it isn't. It is the man who may one day be leading the Once team with a look at winning the Tour de France.
Roland Meyer has been very aggressive these last few days, trying to get himself into a situation where he really has a chance of doing something for Cofidis. They've tried since the loss of Bobby Julich to go into the breakaways to try and win a stage of this Tour de France, but up until now they have not been successful. In the group with him is the Once rider Serrano. Up there as well is number 125 from Vitaliko Seguros. That's Francisco Tomas Garcia, and just on the back there, Alexander Vinokurov, the rider from Kazakhstan.
Oh, Francois Simon now back here with the yellow jersey group. We can tell Lance what it's like up front now, because he's come back. But the pressure, I think, is going to be applied again, continually, in fact, by Fernando Escartin, as they start now to put the screws down there. And my goodness me, I think Simon will get passed backwards down to the next group, and then, well, as I speak, he's already losing ground.
Didn't have much breath to talk to Lance Armstrong as he went by there. Armstrong's group being led all of the time up this climb by Fernando Escartin. Escartin, the Spanish rider who won the stage yesterday, trying to put Armstrong and Alex Zülle into difficulty, but for the moment that isn't happening. We're almost over the summit now of the Col de Soulor, and I don't see really anybody putting Armstrong into difficulty up to the top of the final climb of the day, the Col de l'Aubisque.
Well, great crowd. We felt the crowds were down a little bit in the mountains this year for whatever the reason, but here they're not. This is a lovely crowd on top of the Soulor, heading on to the Aubisque very shortly. This is the group on the road containing number 91, Alexander Vinokurov, number 125, just there too. And that is Francisco Garcia from the Vitalicus team, 59. Tucked in there is Marcos Serrano, and Roland Meyer setting the pace at the front. 4 of them left, Paul. There were originally 8 of them lower down the slopes.
And Richard Virenque still leading the group behind, trying to pull himself back up to the group of Lance Armstrong. He was not able to respond to that attack, which was started by Fernando Escartin, and now he's left virtually on his own, as his teammates weren't really able to help him set the pace anymore on the front of that group. Armstrong again, Phil, riding a very defensive race. He realizes now that this is really the last chance that men like Fernando Escartin and Alex Zülle have to really put him into danger, and they certainly haven't been able to do that, because he responded magnificently to that attack by the Spaniards.
He was waiting for it. He knew it would come, and he was there straight on. If you wait even 1 second when a man attacks on a climb like this, the gap is there, and it's often a fatal mistake. But he was waiting for it. He's right there. Escartin is well aware of it, as Roland Meyer takes the rest over the top here. So he's 4th today over the top of the Col de Soulor.
They're beginning now the descent over the top of the Col de Soulor. They're moving that yellow car away because the group of Lance Armstrong is right behind now the group of Roland Meyer. Leading them over the top, Fernando Escartin. No challenge at all coming from Armstrong, who's in second position there. And they've also picked up Christophe Rinero, the rider from Cofidis. He's now on the back of the group.
Well, the yellow jersey group at 3 minutes and 5 seconds. They've gone over the top behind the three front runners. And there'll be no worries yet for Lance Armstrong. The men he wants around him are all around him in Zuller and Escartin. They'll go down the mountain. Again, Paul, I don't think they'll take any chances. But time is running out for Escartin. Only one climb left the Aubisque.
Over the top, Richard Virenque leads them to get as many points as he can get hold of at the top of the Col de Soulor. But I have to say, they will have to take it precariously on the descent of the Col de Soulor down to the bottom of the Aubisque. Because as you can see, Phil, there is a lot of cloud around here, and going round these corners, you don't really get an idea of what the corner is going to be like when you come out of it.
So going down, split up again across the Pyrenees, some tricky descent. You can see this particular descent is very dangerous. There's no protection on the right-hand side of the road. Well, there is now a little bit of a wall they built this time around. The riders have to be very careful here. Plunging into the mist at 80 kilometers an hour is not the best way to come down the mountain. The only thing that's sure is there won't be any other form of obstruction on this road. It's been closed for hours today for the passage of the Tour de France.
Good move by this group here. Lance Armstrong very comfortable indeed, sitting right up there for the moment, Phil. There's no problem at all for him.
So the Tour de France still chasing three riders, and Lance Armstrong still sitting pretty, at least for the moment.
Welcome back. There are almost 2,000 journalists follow the Tour de France every day from television, newspapers and the radio. But this is the press centre where the members of the written press congregate every evening, almost 1,000 of them. They tap out their stories and send them to all corners of the globe. The incredible thing about the Tour de France, though, is this press centre goes forward every day to a different venue. And the great thing about it is these guys have a different story to write about as the race unfolds.
Well, a busy press room indeed. I used to get down there in the old days, but now the Tour is so busy, I get strapped to the commentary position and I see the racing on television as you do. And what a good race it is again today. And I think, Paul, at the moment, going safely the way of Lance Armstrong. Escartin, yes, we expected him to, and he did attack on the Soulor, but now on the much shorter Col d'Aubisque, it's only a 7-kilometre climb, although it goes higher, he still can't get rid of Lance.
Well, Escartin has tried, and once again he's got a very faithful teammate in him. The man on the front here is Carlos Contreras, the Colombian rider, but you can see the weather conditions here on the Aubisque now are really abysmal. You can't see the valley below, and this is a very difficult climb, and we're trying to still put Lance Armstrong into difficulty. A lot of Spanish riders up there. Alex Zuller is there as well, so second and third in the overall standings are in this group.
Well, this is where Stephen Roche began his big campaign when he won a stage up here, and that was in dense fog as well, going back about 15 years now. These are the three riders who are actually setting the pace and have been all day long since they attacked. And at the front, Alberto Eli has been a real sensation these last few days in the Tour de France. Pavel Tonkov, well, he surprises us because he had a terrible day yesterday and became an immediate non-favourite to win the Tour. Now he's gone out to try and get the stage win. And little Echeverria, well, what can you say about him? He's got one stage win under his belt already.
The group behind, though, with Lance Armstrong now has picked up most of those riders who were caught in between earlier on, and Roland Meyer and Christophe Rinero from Cofidis are in this group, but they're actually eating very rapidly into the advance that those three leaders have, and it's now come down from what was 3 minutes 55 seconds not too long ago to 2.5 minutes.
So it wouldn't surprise us then, Paul, once we get to the top of the Aubisque, a big serious chase back could see Armstrong in the leading group, and then what will we expect?
Well, if it does come down to a sprint finish at the end of a group of 30 or 40 riders, Lance Armstrong must feel pretty confident about that. I'd like to see, in fact, if Daniel Nardalo did manage to recuperate, because earlier on he was in a group further down the climb, and he's probably in this group now with the Italian champion Salvatore Commesso, and in fact the group Richard Virenque is apparently 1.5 minutes behind the group of Armstrong.
Well, I don't see a lot of point in chasing Lance now, because 1, 2, 3 overall in the Tour de France are ahead, and they're going to have the battle together. There's the fourth man overall in the red jersey, Laurent Dufaux, and he is losing ground now, and well, it's going to become a very definite three-horse race if this continues.
Well, I'm surprised to see Laurent Dufaux missing out, because he rode so well yesterday on the first Pyrenean stage that he looked as if he was going to be an excellent performer and would keep very high up in the overall rankings. but that surprise by Fernando Escartin, like the one yesterday, was a very vicious attack, and only the top men in this race could respond.
And it's interesting, isn't it, to see the champion of Italy here, Salvatore Commesso, sitting so near the front of a bunch when they're climbing what is the last big climb of this year's Tour de France. Let's go back up to the two boys from Kelme here, having to work very hard, but Armstrong has all of the answers. They're not attacking him, Paul, they're just trying to keep the pace high, and if they do that, he's going to follow.
Well, Escartin very happy about the makeup of this group. He's got with him in the group Alex Zuller, but he's also put into difficulty people who are further behind him in the overall standings. And those people missing from the group, in fact, the fourth place, Laurent Dufaux, Richard Virenque is not here. Daniel Nardella, who's sixth overall, is not in this group either. So what he's trying to do is consolidate his position in the top three of the overall rankings, and that's why he's got his team on the front, giving it as much hammer as they can.
And now we've gone to the front here as we're climbing steadily, and now we've gone to the chase group. I think actually they're telling us a time gap of 2 minutes 26 seconds now between the Armstrong group and the leading three, so they are closing in, and if this tempo is kept up by the two Kelme riders, they might well pull back those three leaders, Elie Tonkhoff and Echeverria, because it's obviously hurting these two boys who are now saying goodbye to the front. Rinero, last year's King of the Mountains, is just in front of Francois Simon. And you've got to hand it to Francois, because he does take a packet in these climbs and he keeps forcing himself back into the groups.
He's not a big climber, but he's always been in the right place. He's been going in the breakaways before the start of the climb and just surviving and getting picked up each time by a group coming from behind, and then getting dropped off and then pulling himself back into the race.
Well, Lance Armstrong, I wonder if he's thinking, this is the last big climb of the Tour de France. If I can just make the top, I'll have just 60 kilometres to go to the finish, and a lot of that is downhill. And then as far as his tour is concerned, it's all good news to Paris, because once we get to the time trial, he's won the two already we've had. One would presume advantage will go back to him.
Well, the last time trial in the Tour de France is always a very strange one. Let's not forget Lance Armstrong, in fact, has been under a lot of pressure these last few days, physically and mentally. And when it does go through to the final time trial, he may not be completely dedicated to try and winning the stage.
Well, if he goes into that time trial with a lead over Alex Zuller of some 7 minutes, well, he's never going to lose that in a time trial of 50+ kilometres, and he knows that because he's a very good rider, even if he's tired over that sort of distance. So it'll be a lovely feeling. I think tonight Lance Armstrong will feel a very relieved man because all of the mountains will be behind him, and he's been magnificent in both the Alps and the Pyrenees. But this rider here has been a man for the Pyrenees. But right now he doesn't know what to do about Armstrong, who just sits there, doesn't look distressed at all. Zuller the same, to the right in the white. But the fact that Alex hasn't attacked gives me the impression he's surrendered.
Well, he said yesterday he didn't feel as if he was in his greatest day, and he will have had a psychological blow from being dropped on several occasions by Lance Armstrong in that Pyrenean stage. Today, he is riding on the defensive, and Armstrong really just has to ride on the defensive, because if he can keep his margins over the top of this final big climb of the Tour de France, the Col de l'Aubisque, then he's really just going to have to rely on his team for the next couple of days to keep the race together and keep a very close eye on Escartin and Zuller.
Well, the Aubisque is the second highest climb of the day after the Tourmalet at 1,709 metres. When we get down to Pau, the finishing line is situated at a mere 210 metres. So apart from a little hiccup down the way, it's all downhill to the finish. And Escartin not climbing with the same power now.
Escartin might not be climbing with the same power, but he's blown a lot of riders off his back wheel. He really has done. There's Armstrong moving up into second position there, and in fact Alex Zuller very comfortably sitting in third. This again is the big riders of the Tour de France. These are the guys we've seen so much of over the last few days, and these are the men who for the moment are hoping they're climbing themselves up into a very confident place in the top three.
2 minutes 17 seconds the gap now, so they are closing in very rapidly. As we look here at Lance Armstrong then, as he climbs up the mountain, he's a man who must be finding a lot of things going through his mind at the moment, because a story running in the Le Monde newspaper has intimated that he is taking drugs on the Tour de France. He is absolutely denying it, of course, and that the only evidence they've got is they found a minuscule trace of a corticoid in his urine when he gave a test at the beginning of the Tour de France. The measure was 0.2. Now, the legal allowance in any athlete is 6 points, and so really they should never have even been able to find out about that minuscule amount. Armstrong is saying he hasn't taken a thing, but he has applied a massage cream on the sore area of his crotch where he had a boil, and obviously some of that must have gone into the system. But you know, they've tried desperately to prove this man is riding this race on drugs. They have absolutely no evidence to that effect, and yet they will not give up, and Armstrong is finding it, well, I'm surprised it hasn't affected his morale right now.
He's a tough guy, and he will in fact be completely opposite to the rumours that are going around. It will make him even tougher and harder to try and take this yellow jersey up to Paris.
So looking at the Col d'Aubisque then, as we come up towards the summit of the final climb in this year's Tour de France, we're going into the mist of the Pyrenees, so often the case in midsummer. Lance Armstrong has got himself into a lovely position behind the rider who is second overall and won the stage yesterday, Fernando Escartin. Right behind him is the rider in third place overall, Alex Zülle. Belly there is lying ninth overall. Lance Armstrong is going to feel very happy with the way the day has gone today for sure.
Once again, he can say a big thank you to the attacking style of the Kelme squad, who've been in the professional field for over 20 years. It's their 20th year this year, and they've always been competitive when it comes to the big mountain climbs and the big Pyrenean stages as well, because they are so close here to Spain. Fernando Escartin, Phil, I have to say, I've never seen him ride so well in the Tour de France. He's been consistent every day. He's always ridden out of danger, and on the stage over the Passage aux Gois, he never actually got involved in the crash, and he managed to stay very close to Lance Armstrong on that day when normally you would have expected him to be at the back of the pack.
Yes, you would. And what would have happened if Zülle had not have fallen there in the Passage du Gois, because he lost 6 minutes plus, and now he's riding the Tour at some 7 minutes plus behind Armstrong. But that's the Tour de France for you. We're back with the three leaders now who have dictated the race pattern today and have been allowed to do so because the infighting has been going on behind. Alberto Eli in the front, Pavel Tonkov and David Echebarria. They have been together since the climb of the Col du Tourmalet over the Soulor. Now we're nearly over the top of the Aubisque. But then they have a long run down to Pau, and I'm not so sure they'll survive the chase down by the Maillot Jaunes group.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on the front of the Maillot Jaune group, and that is all coming from the green and white jerseys of the Kelme squad of Fernando Escartin, and they've again really hacked off a big lump of their advantage here, because it's 1 minute and 46 between the three leaders and the group of Lance Armstrong.
Well, they've done well because they were 4 minutes at one point, and here comes Eli now. They don't look as slick as they did a couple of cols ago. Eli himself is just keeping the pace going. Tonkov has been the main pacemaker. He has now dropped back into second place. Echebarria hasn't helped at all because he'll feel some obligation to his teammate Abraham Olano, who again today has been in all sorts of trouble. He's fought back to the side of Armstrong, but now he's gone off the back again. So over the top of the col then goes Eli, followed by Tonkov and Echebarria. So Eli continuing his ascent up the King of the Mountains competition.
Escartin still sitting comfortably in second position behind his Colombian teammate Carlos Contreras. Contreras riding a great Tour de France as well. He's always been there when Fernando Escartin has needed him. And Armstrong in third place in the yellow jersey. You can just see the little black earpiece there, which keeps him in communication with his team manager Johan Bruneel. But this group down to a very select group now, with first, second and third overall in the Tour de France here. Alex Zülle being the third place man there in the white jersey of Banesto.
Armstrong left, and he's going to feel great now at this corridor of people cheering him on in the mist. A rather bizarre situation in the Tour de France today, as an American now is set to ride to Paris in the leader's yellow jersey and convert it into a winner's yellow jersey. He started off with his victories in the time trials. He moved to his victory in the Alps, and now he hasn't won a race here in the Pyrenees, but he's made sure his main rivals didn't nip off and gain too much time. Continuing now the climb up to the finish. The top three have gone over, and at the last climb it was around about 4 minutes the difference. It has been closed right down now. Belly here in a little bit of trouble, and so too is Francisco Garcia, the Vitalico Seguros rider. Here they come, and Escartin, Pride here making him sprint. Escartin, Armstrong, 1:26 the gap. Now the long chase down to the valleys below, the finish in Pau. We could see Armstrong in at the kill there, you know, Paul.
Well, Armstrong would love to win this stage, I'm sure of that. He's in an ideal situation to do so at the moment, but we still feel an awful long way to go to the finish. The problem with this stage is at the top of the Col de l'Aubisque, they've got more than 60 kilometers still to go to the finish. This is the group of the rest of the contenders. Richard Virenque is in there. Abraham Olano today, surviving in a big group, is in this group as well as Laurent Dufaux.
And Nardello as well, also here as far as we know. And it can't be that difficult, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to the champion of Italy here, but we don't think of Salvatore Commesso as a real climber yet. He had a stage win though, and he's just setting the pace here now. You know, they are not that far behind even the Armstrong group. There could be a total regrouping in the next 60 kilometres.
In theory there should be, because there is such a long way to go from the Obisque all the way down to the finish line in Pau. But at the moment the group of Richard Virenque is being given as 2.5 minutes behind the group of Lance Armstrong, and they will certainly have to organise themselves at the front of that group to try and pull them back up to the yellow jersey.
And the rider sprinting through there was Bueno Hora. He was in the Armstrong group. He was in a group ahead of Armstrong at one stage, then he was caught by Armstrong, and now he's been dropped as well. The fog here continuing to close in. It just blows in. It's cloud, really. It's not fog at all. As we see Christophe Reniero go over the top now. He's behind the group by almost 3 minutes. So the race now heading down towards the valleys, and we're looking back to about 3.5 to 4 minutes now, again, to the Abraham Olano group. I wonder if they'll all get together.
Welcome back. You know, Pau is behind only Bordeaux and Paris in terms of the number of tour visits it's had, the race having first come here in 1930 and 54 times since, including today. The one year that stands out in the memory, though, is 1995, and I'm sure it'll be on the minds of 3 riders in particular today, because Lance Armstrong, Frankie Andreu and Andrea Perron were all teammates of Motorola's Fabio Casartelli, who I'm sure you'll remember died after a crash on the Col de Porte d'Aspet that year. The following day, when the race came to Pau, those 3 riders and the rest of his teammates led the whole of the peloton across the line in tribute to Casartelli, and that's the only time in 54 stage visits here there's been no winner declared. By the way, although it's the first time he's actually competed in the race for 3 years, Lance Armstrong did make a special trip out here last year when the race went over the Col de Porte d'Aspet and all the riders stopped to pay tribute at the Casartelli Memorial. It's the first time he'll have crossed the finish line in Pau since 1995 though, so I'm sure it'll be an emotional day for him, and even more so perhaps for Andrea Perron, who was Casartelli's best friend and roommate on the Motorola team.
Well, thanks, Gary, and let's hope, and I'm sure it will be a happy occasion today, the arrival here in Pau, because Lance Armstrong, on that occasion, now it could be a happy one because he's in the leading group. He's just come up with the others. There are 12 riders in the front now, and Armstrong is helping to drive this group because they are scurrying away from the rest of the field. Almost 3 minutes back to the other riders now.
An impressive attack there by Fernando Escartin, and why this group is going along so fast is because the riders who are 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th in the overall standings are not in this group. So Fernando Escartin and Alex Zula are confirming their place at the top of the leaderboard, and the last time check we had was 2 minutes and 47 seconds back to the group with Richard Virenque and Abraham Olano.
Well, if they keep this up, Vladimir Belli in this league group will go over Abraham Olano, and he'll move into 8th place, and if the gains continue to the line, he could make 7th or even 6th overall tonight, and that's a big coup for him today because he's been extremely aggressive. The men who have made this decisive split, there was Tonkov, Eli and Echeverria. They were the 3 rabbits who've been out front all day. Once they came over the top of the final climb, the Col d'Aubisque, Armstrong and Escartin drove this group along with Zula and co. So the men that got across, there were 9 of them: Marcus Serrano, Alexander Vinokurov, Fernando Escartin, Carlos Contreras, Francisco Garcia, Vladimir Belli, Alex Zula, Jose Luis Arrieta and the yellow jersey Lance Armstrong. And they knew what they had, and they were all working as one unit here, and they are now driving as a 12-man group. Back to the main field here. Well, they're hardly hanging around, Paul.
Interesting to know that Mapei have come to the front here to chase, because they do have Tonkov in the leading group, but these riders working at the front here are all Italians, and they're trying to move Daniele Nardello closer to the front because they reckon if they can make the junction, then Nardello would have a very good chance at getting the stage victory. The big work has been done by Bernesto, by Lance Armstrong initially, and of course by the Kelme squad, but the other riders in this group now should come to the front and keep a certain amount of tempo going, because they've got a great chance of getting themselves a stage victory. But what happens when you get a shutting off of the organisation at the front like this is all of a sudden you can get a silly break in the group, and maybe 4 or 5 riders will go clear. That's why Armstrong is now being attentive, riding close to the front.
And Carlos Contreras now charging round that big gear there as he rips away a little gap, looks over his shoulder and then starts to rock and roll a little bit. He may be trying here to go clear, but it's up to Zula now to try and close it down.
Well, it's up to the other riders in the group to chase it down, because Zuller and his own teammate Arrieta did a lot of work in this group. But there, in fact, Contreras didn't attack Phil. He was riding so hard at the front to try and keep the advantage for his teammate Fernando Escartini. Opened up a gap of 50 meters, and he's now going to go under the banner, telling him 5 kilometers left to go, with advantage of about 100 meters on the rest.
Well, a little bit of a journey around the city of Po now as we make our way into the centre. And I wonder, we've seen riders do this in Po before, slip away from the front of a breakaway.
There is a split happening now as riders try and launch themselves off the front to get up to the man who's gone out on a lone lead, but it may well be too late. When a man goes off the front like that, Phil, you have to organise the chase behind immediately to try and close down the gap. And he's got a very good gap, but these three guys now are starting to eat into his lead.
Well, the city of Po is not entirely flat. It has a few nasty little lumps in it as you approach the finishing line. And Contreras is on one of those little climbs right now. Used to have a Formula One motor race around the city a few years ago. Now, can they reorganise? Look at the way they're splitting up, Paul.
Well, this is Vinokurov, the man who wears number 91. He saw the danger. He wants a stage victory in the Tour de France, and Alberto Eli for Telecom. He was in the front of the race for an awful long time, but he's digging deep now, because when you get a chance of a stage victory in the Tour de France, you don't lay arms down like that. You have to keep going right through till the very end. And under the banner now, indicating 4 kilometers to go. They're actually right on the back wheel of Contreras, and a few more riders coming up. There are 2 riders now there from the Once squad. One of those is Echavarria, and in fact the other one is going to be Serrano.
Well, what a difference a year makes for Carlos Contreras. He never made further than stage 10 last year when he abandoned the race. Now we're on stage 16 and he could well be winning it.
Well, that's going through now. Vinokurov still very nervous. It looks as if Alex Zuller, Fernando Escartin and Lance Armstrong have actually marked themselves out of this front split, and I expected that could happen. When you get to the end of a race like this, it really is a situation of trying to keep the whole race together. Armstrong is not here, but neither is Escartin nor Zuller. These are the lesser riders in the breakaway, and they are the ones now looking for the stage victory in Po. It's a shame for Armstrong to have missed out on that split, but at the end of the day, what's more important to him is the position of Zuller and Escartin.
Well, Once desperate for another victory here, because Abraham Olano has somewhat let them down. He's fallen away from the overall. They've brought them all back together again now. And there goes Marcos Serrano on the far side. He launches an attack, marked very closely by Alberto Eli, who doesn't really want to go forward just yet. He just went. In fact, that's Echevarria who's gone now. It was Serrano last time, but they're both trying one-on-one, using all the cards they've got. But Eli is waiting as long as he can, and he really didn't want to be in the front right now. Vinokurov, watch out for him, though. He's behind Eli.
Now Echavarria has dropped himself back into the last position in this group to keep a good eye on where everybody else is.
Good place to start from a sprint from as well, Paul, isn't it? The 2 Once boys are sitting at the back there, to the left and to the right. They're both pretty fast finishers. Alberto Eli, though, is watching the leader again. And Echevarria is the first man at the moment, followed by Eli. Then comes Vinokurov. Behind him is Carlos Contreras. I don't think he's a very good sprinter, but you never know at this stage of the race who is a good sprinter.
These riders have all had a very difficult ride since the top of the Col de l'Aubis. They've been riding to try and keep their advantage over the chasing peloton with Virenque, Olano and Laurent Dufaux. But now it's a question of just survival, trying to make sure that you don't let one more man get off the front. This is Serrano now, a dummy attack coming for him. You're going to see this all the way to the finish line. Once have got 2 riders in this group. They'll launch one man after the other to try and break the clear, but it's Contreras that's gone.
So on the far right of our course here, in fact, it's Arrieta who's gone, and he's tied from the inside. Well, Banesto are desperate for a win as well. Arrieta's gone, but being marked here by Vinokurov, who comes across and waits. It's all too early, they feel. At 1 kilometre to go, we're nearly in the finishing square.
1 kilometre to go, 1,000 metres. Now's the time when you've got to be really cold. You've got to be really cool and wait and make sure you don't make your effort until the very last moment, because if you go too soon, you blow a chance of a stage victory in the Tour de France. The cleverest man in the group, though, has got to be Alberto Eli, but it looks as if Echavarria's got his hand up there. He's looking for the attack to come from Serrano. Serrano's going to keep going all the way to the line, because that would give the advantage to his teammate. Echavarria, 53, he's in 5th position now.
Echavarria is the rider on the left of our screen here. He's a very good sprinter. We're into the narrow road now. They will pretty shortly see the finish. We've got Marcos Serrano on the front now. Eli, who has worked so hard for victory, and he hasn't come his way yet. He's sitting there in second wheel now. Carlos Contreras to the left, Vinokurov to the right. Arrieta is at the back now, and trying to get through is the man with no hat on, and that is the little David Echevarria. And in fact, Serrano looking where he is. He looked the wrong way, because Echevarria, now he's seen him. Now he wants to lead him out, but it looks as though he's gone on the left of our picture. stage here. Ellie's got his wheel, and now can Ellie come round him here, because Echevarria grits his teeth. This could be win number 2 for the little Spaniard. He was uphill last time. It's on the flat this time, but Ellie is coming at him. But there's a second kick there. He gets it on the line. David Echevarria gets win number 2. These are the riders who are winning the Tour de France coming in now. First, second and third overall. Lance Armstrong, he says goodbye to the Pyrenees with his 2 most dangerous rivals with him as Pavel Tonkov goes over the line at the head. Well, it was Belly actually who picked Tonkov, but at the other 3 riders at the back of that group were third, second and first overall in the Tour, and that's the way it will stay tonight. But first, the stage result with David Echevarria getting his 2nd win and getting it this time ahead of the Colombian Carlos Contreras and Alberto Elli. The main group, containing Laurent Dufaux, Abraham Olano and Daniel Nardello, they came in 2 minutes 13 seconds later, and this is where they finished. Nardello 20th, Olano 25th and Dufaux 26th. Chris Boardman lost 26 minutes today, but he did finish. He finished in 77th position. Lance Armstrong in yellow again tonight, having come out of the mountains now with his gains largely intact, but also with other things on his mind. Following new allegations in the French press yesterday, they have accused him once more of taking drugs. Here's his answer tonight as he talks to Paul Sherwin.
A lot of rumour and innuendo surrounding your performances here at the Tour de France. Can you tell us just exactly where this latest rumours come from?
Yeah, it's a good question of where it came from, because normally these things should sort of remain within the sport. It turns out I was using some cream for what we call a saddle sore, and it was something that we all use. I mean, a cortisone cream that you use for a crash or for a boil or any sort of skin infection, and the traces were so small. I mean, they were ridiculous, but yet the French press declared me positive and said that, and basically called me a doper.
Do you feel it's some kind of persecution against you?
I don't think so. I think it's partly against me, but I think it's more against the sport. I think 1,500 journalists here at the Tour de France this year, and a good bit of them are have never been here before, and they're just here for a dirty story. They're here for a drug story, and if Lance Armstrong uses a cream for a saddle sore, and that's a drug story, then so be it. But it's not a doping story.
Well, Lance Armstrong forced once again to defend himself there, which is becoming a depressingly familiar sight on this tour. But tonight, he has some very high-level help, because the UCI, the world governing body of cycling, have just released this press communique. It goes against all their commitment to medical secrecy, they say, but they want to do it to clarify this situation and stop it getting further out of hand. They confirm basically what you've heard Lance just tell Paul Sherwin, that the rider used an ointment, and they give the brand name, and that he also offered them a medical prescription before his test. They say that Lance Armstrong was tested twice, once on the 3rd of July with no traces of corticosteroid found, then again on the 4th of July when there were minute traces, and to quote them, the result of these tests on these 2 dates unquestionably demonstrates that there was no systematic use of the drug. So that should clear things up, at least until the next rumour starts.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Paul, and let's hope the matter ends there. Well, here's the overall situation tonight. Armstrong leading Fernando Escartin by 6¼ minutes, Alex Zülle by 7:28. The time gaps are large ones now. And with the high mountains behind us for this year, Richard Virenque has done enough now to win the King of the Mountains title for a 5th time. He's 1 short of the record. Eric Zabel still on course 2 to win the green jersey for a 4th successive year. He is still pulling away from Stuart O'Grady. But I think all of the riders smiling now as they leave the Pyrenees behind them. No more mountains to climb in this year's Tour de France, as the race now heads up the west coast of France, bound for Bordeaux. 141 riders still in, and the distance 200 kilometres. Hello again and welcome to the Tour de France. Well, yesterday was the last day in the mountains of this event, and it certainly was Lance Armstrong's longest day. He spent 5 hours on the bike, and then for 2 hours after that he tried to convince the media of this race that he really is riding it without chemical assistance. The team also asked the UCI, the world body, the International Cycling Union, if they would also release the confidential information on the drug tests he's given so far. Here's an extract from that statement. The UCI confirmed that the controls performed up to the 19th of July during the Tour de France have all produced negative results. The rider used the ointment Semolite, which contains triamcinolone, to treat a skin allergy. In view of all these elements, the UCI affirms in the strongest terms that such use is permitted by the rules and therefore does not constitute any form of doping. This whole situation has come about because of an article appearing in the French daily newspaper Le Monde, and this was Lance Armstrong's answer on French television last night.
We're not talking about doping. We're talking about a simple skin cream. And I wanted to talk to the press. I always want to talk to, when there's a problem, I want to speak with the press. Today, there was clearly a problem. I wanted to speak to the press conference, come here on Vélo Club, explain the situation. Le Monde is looking for a doping story, but there's not one. There's a story of skin cream.
And Le Monde, by the way, being the newspaper and not the American cyclist who's won the Tour de France 3 times and is here now witnessing this incredible performance by Lance Armstrong. The rollout then of the 17th stage now, 200 kilometres from Ronx to Bordeaux. And the riders facing up to what should be, Paul, by tradition, a long hot day in the saddle on very straight roads.
Unbelievable, the roads in this part of France, long and straight through the area called Les Landes.
Into Bordeaux, and as we expected, the whole field coming in together. Now, can Erik Zabel at last to get that stage win, which would equal the German record along with Rudi Altig? He set it. He's won 8 stages. Zabel hasn't won a stage for a couple of years. He's got his teammates to lead him out. He looks good.
He looks good. Alberto Eli swings off, leaves it up now to Kai Hundermark. Right behind him, Stefan Westermann. He's the pilot fish for Erik Zabel. Zabel's right up there, but on his wheel is Tom Steels.
Well, Steele's obviously the danger man sitting in the slipstream there of Zabel. Stuart O'Grady is not to be seen here at the moment now. The last lead-out man, as always, is young Stefan Weissermann here. His first Tour de France. He's not that young, by the way, but he's now very, very strong. Steele's, though, is dangerous just on the wheel of Zabel. Now, a little bit of hesitation, but Zabel is going now. George Hincapie's trying to get in. So, too, is Robbie McEwen. McEwen goes right, but Steele's comes through the middle and makes it look easy. Tom Steels has refound his sprinting legs straight out of the Pyrenees. The face there, Paul, of Zabel.
Zabel just looked across. He knew he was beaten. As soon as he saw the white jersey of Tom Steels coming by, he knew he had nothing left to respond. Steels is certainly the fastest sprinter in the Tour over the last 50 metres.
So Steels has a personal tally of 1-3 and disqualified in 1 now after winning 4 stages last year. Look at this, though. He makes it look so easy. He is so much quicker than anybody else in this Tour once he reads the sprint just right. And here is poor Stuart O'Grady. In fact, he had a crash just in the last kilometre, a little bit of a contretemps with other riders, including Robbie McEwen, and he was dumped on the ground, and as a result, he's lost all hope now of that green jersey because he got no points today. Zabel in 3rd place, George Hincapie taking 4th, and the other sprinter Martinelli just behind. So the sprinters' stage is over at Bordeaux. The riders now looking to the 18th stage here as they go up to nearby Jonzac to the ride to Futuroscope, which is the scene of the next time trial and the last time trial of the Tour. Riders rolling away, and it's a flat road all of the way here of 184.5 kilometres.
And again, it should be a day for the sprinters because they need to keep themselves together. But what happened again, Phil, was the big break got clear, and running into the finish, 13 men were at the head of the race.
And out front they've been for the most part of the day. They got away at 25 kilometres, and now it's all down to which one of them can win the sprint here. Nobody again, Paul, is endangering the race leader overall, but this man in the last kilometre, Gianpaolo Mondini, has got away.
He surprised them all again. The thing is, there were 5 French riders in that group and 4 Italians. But the strange thing is, once an Italian gets clear, they do not chase him down. They leave it up to the other nationalities. And again, the French still chasing a stage victory, and they can't pull back Jean-Paul Mondini, who so far this year has got 1 win to his credit, a stage in the Tour of Japan.
And don't forget, he wasn't coming here until about 48 hours before the race began because the team wasn't one of the original selections. They were first reserve. Now he's going to go home with a stage win in the Tour de France because I don't think they're going to come back to him now. He's sprinting home to the area where the big showdown will come tomorrow in the time trial. Gianpaolo Mondini of the Cantina Tollo team is coming home and looking very, very good indeed. It's been an opportunist breakaway and they should never have let it happen.
They should never let it happen. The teams of the sprinters should have controlled it. They tried to over the first 30 or 40 kilometers, keeping the pace high, but this man timed it to perfection. He's cheated all of the French riders. Again, 5 Frenchmen in that group. Jean-Cyril Robin, the white jersey, trying to come up to the line, but once again it's going to go over the border, this time to Italy, Jean-Paul Mondini.
And Robin, in disgust, waves his right arm because, again, the French have failed to win a stage and he's got second, and I've lost count of the second places they have had. But, you know, they are set to have the worst tour since 1926, and they're running out of chances. There's only 2 stages left to win. But this rider won't care because he has got his stage victory in the Tour de France, the biggest stage victory of any race he's ever had. And there are 120 riders in this sprint here now, which is for 14th place. And it looks as though Robbie McEwen is going to get the better this time of Zabel. And O'Grady was just in there off to the right as well. So he loses even more points now to Eric Zabel. There's the result of the stage. Mondini ahead of Robin Vinokourov. Piccoli again there snatching 4th place. Overall, Lance Armstrong keeps his lead. And the names behind him are just the same as they were at the start of the day. Well, we're looking down on the theme park now of Futuroscope. In fact, this will be the scene of the big depart of the Tour de France next year. This is where it all starts from, but right now Lance Armstrong is looking where he's going to finish the 86th edition right here. He's won both time trials so far, Paul, and he's looking now to join some big names if he can make this 3.
A very difficult time trial, 57 kilometers. All the big names been out and looked at the course this morning, and Armstrong last man to start.
Last man to start. He won the prologue at Le Puy de Fou. Then he regained the yellow jersey at the time trial at Metz. For nearly 2 weeks, he has successfully defended that with a great team around him. Now, can he even increase his lead, or can he at least win the race?
The most important thing for Armstrong is to get round and not lose too much time to keep himself at the top of the leaderboard. The big battle really is for 2nd and 3rd place. The battle has been between Fernando Escartin, who's currently in 2nd, and Alex Zuller, the Swiss rider, who is currently in 3rd. And it's that fight that is really going to decide who gets onto the highest step of the podium alongside Lance Armstrong.
Well, these riders were split by 3 minutes at the start house today, but look at this now. Armstrong is absolutely flying here because that man in front is Fernando Escartin, and at 20 kilometres to go, he's going to have him.
He's pulled back 1 minute every 10 kilometers on Escartin, but I tell you, one man doing some fast times out on the course is Alex Zuller. Zuller has really ridden well over this course, but the best times so far are being set by Rick Verbrugge, but this, Phil, I have to say, is unbelievable. Armstrong has caught his 3-minute man and gone straight by.
Now, Escartin, he'll do well to try and hold on to the skirt tails of Armstrong here because this is the rider setting the time checks ahead of them. Alex Zuller, the other two still to arrive there, knocking off Rick Verbrugge off the top of the timer boards. But these two now are locked in battle, and it might help Escartin.
Well, if Escartin can just keep Lance Armstrong in his sights, Hamilton has the best time at the finish line. Tyler Hamilton, 1:09.52, and he's going to beat the time trial champion of the world, Abraham Olano, who is not going to win this stage.
Well, with only 1 day to go, the boys said to Tyler Hamilton, go out and really show them how to ride, and he's done that now because Olano has come in, and only a 1:10.35 for 3rd best for him, so that's a big surprise. Armstrong, though, is still setting the best times.
This is at the 42-kilometer time check. Hamilton went through there in 52 minutes 23 seconds, and Armstrong is pretty close to that.
Armstrong is a lot better than that right now, and Casero, he's had a great ride today, this man. He's fought for a high finish, and he's aiming at Richard Virenque's top place in the GC, and with a time like that, he might get it. 2nd best time. He's even beaten Olano. That's incredible.
Still, it's unbelievable. Tyler Hamilton is at the top of the leaderboard, and all the big names have nearly come in. The next man coming very close to it is going to be Alex Zuller. Zuller is trying to get the victory. Look at the time to beat, 1:09.52. Zuller looks as if he may well go inside that.
Well, Zuller was 51.19 at 42 kilometres. Armstrong's gone through quicker than that there. Zuller, though, is the leader at the finishing line. 1:08.26. So, do you know, Paul, there's a real chance here. Now he's going to finish 2nd again to Lance Armstrong, and I'll make that the 4th time this tour.
Laurent Dufaux wanted to do a good ride here this afternoon, but he's not going to finish inside the top 20. He's well outside. The next man who's going to come up to the finish line is going to be Lance Armstrong. But I think, Phil, that Armstrong is cracking over the last 5Ks.
Well, this is how he's ridden his time trials. He's gone as fast as he possibly could. His legs have sold out a little bit. And in fact, the time checks are saying that there's not much between Zuller and Armstrong right now. There was a big gap at one stage, but you're right. Armstrong has slowed down. And Zuller, don't forget, still has the best time at the finish of 1:8.26. This is going to have to be a sprint to the line here if Armstrong wants to join names like Eno, Merckx and Indurain as having won all of the time trials of a Tour de France. Look at the clock. Zuller is 1:8.26. There's still a ways to go here. This is going to be very close. Armstrong was clearly ahead earlier. Now he's not. Armstrong doesn't know it, but he needs to sprint to get the victory. As the clock counts on, he makes it ever so close, but he makes it, and 1:8.17 is good enough. And there he is on the podium. So Lance Armstrong has won all of the time trials, and he's now set to win the Tour de France. He has beaten, in fact, Alex Zuller by 9 seconds there. He now leads overall by 7 minutes and 37.
Stage 20 of the Tour de France, 143 kilometres and culminating with 10 laps of the Champs-Élysées.
The final day of the Tour de France, and Lance Armstrong signs in for his last day as leader of the race. Today in Paris, he will be crowned as winner. 141 of 180 will make the Champs-Élysées today after almost 4,000 kilometres racing on French, Italian and Spanish roads. Lance Armstrong knows, barring a fall, his lead of 7 minutes 37 seconds is unassailable. And it really is a most beautiful day here in Paris for the arrival of the race. But before we see the riders come onto the Champs-Élysées, let's go to Gary Imlach, who will now look back at a remarkable 3 weeks for Lance Armstrong.
I don't think it's any secret that my form is good and my condition is good. And when somebody has good condition, the possibilities open up a lot.
Lance Armstrong took a crowbar to the possibilities with a storming prologue ride at Le Puy de Fou, marking his return to the Tour with his first ever yellow jersey. His pre-race interview was starting to sound prophetic.
It's very open, and I think the possibilities for something strange to happen in the first week are high.
Cut to stage 2 and a crash on the Passage du Gois. Lance was safely ahead of it. His main rivals, including Alex Zuller, over 6 minutes behind. It was a huge slice of luck, but not one he necessarily needed. Another storming time trial performance at Metz on stage 8 proved that. And if there were any question marks against his climbing, he removed them along with his main rivals with a majestic solo win at Sestriere.
This will be some victory salute. It'll be a while before we know if it is as the winner of the Tour de France, but there are few people in this race now will doubt that.
Sadly, the doubts, at least in the French press, were all about the legitimacy of Armstrong's performance, and he found himself having to defend more than the lead.
I can emphatically say I'm not on drugs. Look, I understand the French have had a rough 3 weeks, and I understand that if they don't win a stage, it's the first time since 1926. But don't take it out on the medical miracle American in the yellow jersey. That's not fair.
No amount of sniping can dent Armstrong's sense of achievement, though, or dilute the pride he'll feel when he hits the Champs-Élysées in yellow.
To ride into Paris and have a little bike ride in the middle is unbelievable. To think that I could wear the yellow jersey there is fantastic. It will be something that I will cherish, and hopefully something that I can do again.
Well, the way he's ridden this year, a lot of people will now believe he most certainly can do it again. The final stage here, the Lanterne Rouge this year, Jackie Giron, he's found himself a little red light as he rides along. Very traditional this bit, Paul. A lot of the riders have got themselves coloured hair as well.
Everybody has a bit of fun on the last day. They're so happy to have got round the 3-week race, the almost 4,000 kilometres, 2,500 miles of the Tour de France. And Jackie Giron having a bit of a laugh, but so too is the champion of France, Francois Simon. In fact, he's had a special hairdo for the day.
Well, that's the French tricolour, but this must have been a bit more difficult. This is the Danish flag here on the head of Lars Mikkelsen, who went ahead, had to sit down on a cup of tea before he rejoined the race. But he didn't have any problem catching up because the race was in no hurry going towards the streets of Paris. Lance Armstrong with his victorious team now in happy mood because the wheels don't start to turn in anger by tradition until they come into Paris.
Just to give those boys a very big thank you for the job they've done over the last few days. But you know, it's a great ride at the Tour de France, riding to the finish, but you always have to be very careful because when the race is not too fast, you can end up coming down.
And that is Robbie McEwen, and the rider going down with him is Udo Bolt. A rather nasty fall, but happily both on the bikes and riding as the race was now ready to enter the streets of Paris. Everybody up and running. Udo Bolt, the champion of Germany, last to be pushed away. Now for the action.
This is the sight every bike rider wishes for, Phil, to see the Eiffel Tower, because they realise very shortly afterwards they're going to ride onto the Champs-Élysées, and then everything happens. Everybody fights to go to the front, and it nearly always is a sprinter's dream.
Down the banks of the beautiful River Seine, the Eiffel Tower, and the boys who have guided Lance Armstrong in that yellow jersey for 2 full weeks now bring him onto the Champs-Élysées, and there's no doubt now who will win the Tour de France, but we're only in doubt as to who will win the final stage. This is the Rue de Rivoli as we head now towards the Place de la Concorde.
A great performance by US Postal, keeping this field all together for 2 whole weeks, looking after Lance Armstrong on every stage, and a big bunch now coming up to the line, and once again Team Telecom in control.
Well, Telecom still trying to find a way through for Eric Zabel, who's going to win that green jersey for the 4th time. Zabel goes on the right. McEwen challenges him on the far right, and this is a very good finish by McEwen. He's never won a stage in the Tour de France, but he's close, and this time he's done it. Robbie McEwen gives a yelp of delight there, but the winner of the Tour de France in that big field is the American Lance Armstrong, and what a ride that has been. It'll be remembered in the millennium as one of the finest sporting achievements in the history of not just cycling, but of any sport. And there he is now as he rolls to a halt for the last time. He receives the congratulations from his teammates and from other riders as he turns in now towards the Tribune of Honour. Let's have a look at that sprint again, though, as Robbie McEwen on the far right finally got the finish he has always promised to do in his Tours de France, and that is get a stage win. He now becomes only the 4th Australian rider ever to win a stage of the Tour de France. Happy days for the man from Brisbane in Queensland as he salutes the crowd here on the Champs-Élysées and takes the winner's award. This is one he really wanted. What a turnaround for his season, and the tears are about to fall, I think. And Robbie McEwen winning ahead of Eric Zabel. He was injured at the start of the year in Paris-Nice, and he's now obviously back in good condition. Stuart O'Grady, another Australian there, getting 4th place, and Tom Steele's out of it. Didn't got it all wrong, finishing 8th. But to the man who has won the Tour de France, Lance Armstrong, only the 2nd American cyclist ever, and the greatest story you would ever wish, from day 1 when he won the prologue to today when he won the Tour. He wins the Tour by a massive margin of 7 minutes 37 seconds over Alex Zuller, who has been 2nd before and now has to be 2nd again. Fernando Escartin gets his best finish ever in 3rd. Laurent Dufaux hung on there for 4th, ahead of a fast-finishing Angel Casero and a rather limping Abraham Olano. In the green jersey competition, well, he's done it 4 times straight, and this is one of the best races we've seen for the green jersey in years, thanks to the great riding of Stuart O'Grady. And so Eric Zabel joins Sean Kelly, but he's the only man to win it 4 times in a row. The King of the Mountains has been won by the man the organisation tried to ban. When they were forced to take him, he again showed he is a great climber. Richard Virenque has now won that title 5 times in 6 years. The Banesto at times had to fight for it, but they ran out the winners in the team. So the Tour de France is over and Lance Armstrong is the winner. A miracle, a fairy tale, call it what you will. Right now it's reality. And Lance Armstrong can now enjoy the fruits of being only the 2nd American rider to win the Tour de France. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. This one really is one for the history books. Goodbye.